These things are real. They're here. This is happening now.
A light appeared, and like a blue bar of light hovering over the road. On one side, witnesses could see it. On the other side, they couldn't see anything.
Our night that we went out there, they were blasting the phenomenon with EM frequencies from Bowsy through the tunnels into the forest. Because those blue lights that we saw, plasmas being targeted by lasers. They were generating the phenomenon, which was probably what they were hitting was the actual phenomenon, the exposure, what they created from blasting this energy.
They got immediately merged into UFOs, and I'm not sure what UFOs are, but these aren't spacecraft. These aren't extraterrestrial.
High-power radars and ionospheric heaters are capable of making atmospheric plasmas. Now, these are glowing balls of light, like ball lightning. They can move from speeds that are stationary to many thousands of miles an hour. They will follow Earth energy gradients. If they're artificial, if it's by radar sweep, then they may be swept across the sky in regular or intelligent patterns.
We have now released Land Quick Strike. Repeat, we have now released Land Quick Strike.
We will deep dive into the world of UAP. Past to the present, and some considerations, historical accounts, possibilities, and some personal perspectives on a substantial number of UAP issues. Some involve close encounters with UAP and the effects on human beings. Add up threat assessment, weaponizing UAPs, and the race to be the first to do it, and we have a lot to unpack in this edition, The Weaponization of UAP. Yesterday's science fiction, today's reality. You want to hear something really nutty? I heard of a couple of guys who want to build something called an airplane. You know, you get into it, you fly around like birds. It's ridiculous, right? And what about breaking the sound barrier, rockets to the moon, or atomic energy, or missions to Mars? Science fiction, right? Spectrum Blues by Steve Misrich. There are many documented cases of electromagnetic effects in conjunction with paranormal phenomena. Similarly, UFOs and other paranormal occurrences often cause interference with car engines and other electrical equipment. And some feel UFOs hovering near power lines may cause blackouts. Those who have seen UFOs often receive dehydration and eye burn as a result of high-frequency actinide UV radiation. The presence of unusual EM activity, windows of paranormal activity, is often demonstrated by the tendency for compass needles and other electronic instruments to behave wildly. It has been demonstrated that very low frequency waves of greater wavelength than conventional radar cause interference with electronic equipment, such waves being generated by a thermonuclear explosion. This is known as hero effects and is a recognized danger by the military. High-frequency EM waves, microwaves, X-rays, cosmic rays, etc., are dangerous to organisms because of their heating effects on tissue. Some of the recent research suggests that EM behavioral effects include changes in perception, circadian rhythms, and other biological clocks, reaction time and reflexes, and orientation navigation ability in animals. Some reports feeling of disorientation and nerve paralysis or discomfort Others suggest that there may be effects at the cellular level, and that, to wit, cells are rapidly oscillating semiconductors, perhaps due to properties of RNA or calcium oxidation in the cell membrane. Some researchers in this area, Becker and Marino, feel that DC current stimulates cell growth and regeneration, and that conversely, wrongly tuned EM fields may have adverse health effects, possibly causing cancer, natal problems, and cataracts, among other disorders reported. EM fields surrounding the body may be a form of bioinformation, the organizing fields that tell cells in the body where to go and how to function. Further, organisms may use EM waves to transmit information. This is, after all, how many insects send signals from one antenna to another. The possibility of human telepathy may be just such a form of transmission. Biological radio has fascinated many scientists. Unfortunately, some of the evidence for the hypothesis is weak because ESP clearly works in EM-shielded Faraday cages. One might surmise that some of the ESP transmissions may occur through previously undocumented and unshielded types of radiation, and only partially in the spectrum blocked by the cage. Certainly, the fact that ESP does not fall off in range like most other signals it worked out in space suggests that it's not a standard form of EM wave. It is the fact that EM energy may cause perceptual changes that may be of most interest to paranormal researchers. Andrea Pueric has found that ELF waves may indeed have the ability to control behavior if they are at beta wave 5 to 8 Hz frequencies, and that various agencies have researched the possibility of behavioral control in this area. Some EM phenomena generated in those zones, in particular the so-called Earth lights, are very physical and real. The very odd behavior of some will-o-wisps, spook lights, or ball lightning has suggested to Vincent Gaddis and others that these may be forms of intelligence, electro-animals with purposive behavior. One simplistic explanation of the Fortean occurrences in these areas is that contact with these EM entities produces hallucinations and causes the person to see whatever his belief system is likely to accept. A flying saucer, a hairy ape, a ghost, an angel, a talking tree, or whatever. An alternative explanation advanced by Paul Devereaux is that these energy balls are subject to psychokinetic molding into whatever we want to see. John Keel notes that in most UFO sightings, what is first seen is a bright light, which is then followed by the outlines of a structure. UFOs may be nothing more than just superspectrum entities. The fact that they are often changed coloration from red to indigo to vanishing altogether suggests to Keel that they are specters transiting through and then leaving our visible light spectrum. Some of the UFO's flagrant violations of the laws of physics, in particular angular momentum, do suggest it is not a physical object. The physical effects of the UFO, stalling cars, strange electronic signals on radios and phones, eye burn, and CNS effects suggest that it has a powerful EM field associated with it, if it is not itself an EM entity. The exploration of the electromagnetic basis of life and consciousness has just begun, and is the terra incognita bound to contain a host of surprises? Who knows what we might be able to see in those rare superspectral windows? Many of the UFO entities claim to come from other time and another light. This may be a garbled way of explaining that they exist beyond the known or knowable EM spectrum. One day, we may figure out how to use these gateways in the same way that the superspectrum entities do, and use them to travel to other realities. Timing and time perception, June 2020. Scene and object violations cause subjective time dilation. Authors Jason Clark and Michaela Porobanova. For a given physical duration, certain events can be experienced as subjectively longer than others, an illusion referred to as subjective time dilation. Many factors have been shown to lead to this illusion in perceived duration, including low-level visual properties of the stimulus, an unexpected stimulus in the sequence of events, as well as affective factors. Here we report the results of 2 experiments in which we tested for the influence of scene and object knowledge on subjective time dilation. Based on the results of earlier studies, we predicted that the visual scenes and objects containing semantic violations would be judged as lasting longer than controlled stimuli. The findings from both experiments indicate that the stimuli containing semantic violations were judged to be present for longer than stimuli without semantic violations. We interpret our results to mean that neural processes that encode for perception of duration can operate on conceptually integrated scene and object representations. We further conjecture that the underlying neural code for duration perception is likely correlated with the amplitude of neural activity expended on the processing of incoming sensory information. Unlike our other perceptual modalities, which operate on incoming sensory information registered with specialized receptor cells, our perception of time does not, it seems, result from the stimulation of specialized sensory receptors. Indeed, we still have the perception that time is passing when deprived of all sensory input. In the absence of sensory receptors, what is the brain using as the input to create the perception of duration? The evidence presented here, combined with that from other studies, suggests that one factor is the efficiency with which the stimulus is encoded by the brain and the concomitant neural activity. We agree with Eagleman and Pariadith that the perception of the duration may be related to very low-level properties of neurons, but we also claim that such low-level processes can be impacted by high-level cognitive processes, including those involved in scene and object representations. One of the most fascinating scenes in the movie Contact developed from Carl Sagan's book, when the representative of Earth, Dr. Arroway, eventually arrives on what appears to be a sandy beach after a journey halfway across the cosmos. If you look closely, the bent palm trees on the shoreline mirror the shape of a drawing the young Arroway made as a child, which we see at the beginning of the film. Intrigued, Arroway reaches out towards the sky above and pokes a finger into the edge of her perception, causing ripples to appear in her reality, confirming that while this all seems real, it isn't exactly, somehow, real. For someone trapped in a highly time-dilated bubble, time outside the bubble will be passing slowly due to the quirks of relativity, while time inside a region of high time dilation will appear to move slowly. Time outside the time dilation bubble will appear to be passing slowly for someone inside it. In 1985, Caltech physicist M. Morris and K. Thorne discovered the principle of traversable wormholes based on Einstein's general theory of relativity, published in 1915. Morris and Thorne did this as an academic exercise at the request of Carl Sagan, who had completed the draft of his novel, Contact. This little exercise led to the development of two new cottage industries in space-time physics research: the study of traversable wormholes and the study of time machines. Wormholes are hyperspace tunnels through space-time, connecting either remote regions within our universe or two different universes. They even connect different dimensions and different times. Space travelers would enter one side of the tunnel and exit the other, passing through the throat along the way. The travelers would move at c is the speed of light, 3 times 108 ms, through the wormhole, and therefore not violate special relativity. But external observers would view the travelers as traversing multi-light-year distances through space at FTL speed. A stargate is a special class of traversable wormhole solutions to Einstein's general relativistic field equation that possesses very simple physics that flat entry and exit openings. This may also beg the question: are perceptions of time slips explainable by quantum mechanics as random time solutions? Futurism Online also has commented, "Weird science or tomorrow's reality? Could it all come down to the effects of time dilation? That tricky little consequence of general relativity wherein gravity has the ability not only to warp space, but to distort time as well. Naturally, the deeper you are in a large object's gravity well, the greater the distortion of time experienced." All right, there you go, everybody. The first half of this latest edition of Phenomenon Radio right here on the Unnext Network. This is Phenomenon Radio, weaponization of UAP. This one was heavily laced with time dilation and time. It was all about time, and gravitational elements involved in that. And so without further ado, I'm going to bring in James Warrow. How you doing, James?
Good evening, good afternoon. Hello.
The professor. How you
doing? Hey, everybody. Hi. Greetings from France.
And John Burroughs. All right, John.
Hey, everybody.
Right.
You know, this show was very heavily into, gravitational information and time dilation. Time dilation is a very, very important layer in this game. And so, I want to get right into it. I don't want to let the iron cool off here. John, in your experience, did you ever have any time dilation? What time dilation did you experience in Rendlesham Forest, if so?
Well, it has to do with, at least on night 3, where Adrian Bustinza saw me go in, or the whatever it was, I guess a plasma or whatever it was, came over the top of me and I disappeared. and that's probably when I went into the time dilation bubble that's been verified. On night one, when we met back up with the group of people, my watch and Penniston's watch were both 45 minutes slow. So based on what you just learned about time dilation and what we experienced and what they were working on in the area at the time, there's a good chance that yes, night 1 and 3 I experienced time dilation.
My goodness, time dilation. It's a heavy layer, and knowing that you guys had like 45 minutes. You said yours and Penniston's watch was 45 minutes off?
Yes, they were both 45 minutes slow.
What about Cabanzak? Did he ever have any?
We didn't question that. I don't remember him commenting on it. I don't even know if he had a watch on. So it was just brought up that at the time, what time was it? We hadn't even looked at our watches, and they told us what time. You're kind of looking at your watch at the same time.
Of course.
I saw mine was slow, and Penniston, I said, wait a minute, mine's 45 minutes slower. And Penniston said, Dave, so's mine. So that's, I don't know about, as far as Cabanzak, if he was even wearing a watch at the time. So,
but it did happen. It did happen. There was time dilation involved on the third night. Well, I guess I need to move over to James, because James he's the scientist that put all of this together, the wordsmith that goes and finds all this research and all these documents and all these reports and all of these papers that are written. James, can you tell us about the effects on the human body, during these phenomena encounters, and especially people's perception of missing time?
Well, especially in John's case, there seems to be some kind of anesthetic almost. One would probably be the best thing that you could take from this. For instance, so many people have been under general anesthetic, for instance, you go under, you wake up, all of a sudden it's like, 2 hours have gone and there's nothing, that to you, you've just gone to sleep and woken up. And for some reason, this seems to be quite prevalent in not only John's case, but other cases as well. I mean, you get these cases of balls of light hovering over, following cars, and then the next minute these people get engulfed in this light. Then all they can remember is driving either in the opposite direction or being further down the road than they could account for. Now, whether or not it's again a physical thing, are they being transported, or is it a mental thing whereby there is some kind of underlying it's like a suspended animation almost, whereby there's nothing that can explain where and why unless you've got an outside observer on what has actually occurred. Now, what's really unique with John's case is the fact that there was an outside observer that's come forward, which is Adrian Bustenza, to witness what happened to John. Now, John's recollection, as far as I'm aware, please correct me if I'm wrong, John, but all you remember was a light above you and then disappearing. Yet, from the outside observer, there was a lot more time passed, according to Adrian Bustenza's observations and account, compared to what you experienced. Now, again, the only rational thing you can equate that to physically, mentally, is a form of anesthesia. As well as there's other things, obviously, with near field effects, tissue damage from 300 gigahertz, I think it is, which is terahertz, in between infrared and microwave emissions, which is being looked at obviously by Dr. Green and others there. But that's more in relation to advanced aerospace systems. We still don't actually understand what it was that John was encountering. There's many kind of different ideas, even from Gary Nolan and Dr. Green and even Harold Putoff. There's different sort of ideas on what actually occurred. But what can be ascertained is that he did experience a form of time dilation. And how would you, like, for instance, let's just just a quote from Dr. David Clarke's paper when he was discussing the Project Condign report. In his summary, Ron Haddo, the author of the Project Condign, recommends that UK military should investigate potential methods whereby plasma could be harnessed and used as advanced weaponry. Now, what kind of advanced weaponry are we looking at there? Are we looking at something that can literally turn someone off, go round them, turn them back on again, and then they don't know? Now, in a military setting, that is something, if you could harness that in a military setting, for instance, it would completely alter the scope of any kind of warfare that was out there, and if everyone had that kind of technology, it would be null and void. It would almost be a stalemate, which is why some of these, I believe, entities of government and intelligence officials are very interested in that aspect, literally because of the weaponization of whatever this is, whether it's propulsion or whether it's making people go to sleep, even a suspended state of animation, and it all has sort of military aspects, military potential. Unfortunately, I always talk about the military potential of these things because that is what it would probably be used for. Maybe many years down the line, it will be used for riot control or something like that, just to stop people from doing what they're doing and then doing something, maybe corralling them, I don't know, like cattle. And then literally, and it's all to do with, like Gary Nolan said, it's all to do with the mind, the effects on the mind. Whereas Dr. Green talks a lot about the tissues, even though he's a neuroscientist and stuff like that. He talks a lot about tissues, but Gary Nolan does go into more what the effects it has on the brain. When people are close to this type of thing. Even suspended animation, the reports from years ago from the Fatima incident, for instance, it was as if these three kids were there and they were in some kind of trance, some kind of suspended animation almost from their point of view, whereby something was going on. Yeah. It was being witnessed by other people, but other people were seeing different things. Obviously, outside observers were seeing different things. Right. But again, that's another case, a historical case, whereby this idea of controlling somebody and their mind and potentially utilising it for warfare.
Right.
That's
that seems to be the first, middle, and last place financing for this kind of research and study comes from, is weaponizing in war. Unfortunately. In this edition of Phenomenon Radio this week, we presented a lot of physics for everybody to chew on. There was a lot of subject matter, a lot of reports, a lot of papers that are written around the physics and of time dilation, time slips, and suspended animation, all of that. I want to move over to Professor Simon. Can you talk a little bit about the physics of relative time and how time is measured by the human body? Because even I talked about being put, like in a black box, pitch black, and still we have this mechanism in us that tells us time is moving and time marches on. Talk a little bit about the physics of relative time and how it's measured by the human body.
I'd love to. Physics and time is so important. We all think that time is an arrow, a river going in one direction. But only at the beginning of the 20th century, Albert Einstein started absolutely understanding a new definition of time. And when he said that all time is relative, and it's relative to your motion, and it's relative to gravity. And I think that's very relevant in John Burroughs' case at Rendlesham Forest incident.
Right.
Let me give you an example. If you were in a fast-moving spaceship and you were flying to the planet Zog and it took you 2 months to get there and 2 months to get back, time for you is absolutely normal. You can measure it in your local reference as lasting 2 months. But when you come back, Earth, Cape Canaveral is 20 years later, because they are in a different time zone to you. Their time is normal, your time is normal, but time is affected by your relative speed and also gravity. So if you remember in the classic Hollywood movie where it talked about visiting a planet near a black hole, when they went down to that planet, which could be potentially possible if it's not a little iffy, every minute they stood on that planet, because of the immense gravitational force, which also affects time on that planet, aged their reference back to Earth by a whole year. So they could only stay a few minutes because when they went back, their families would have moved on and it would have been 20 years later. So when you realize that time is relative to your motion and to gravity, it starts putting a new meaning on time dilation as being real. If you are moving fast, if you are in an immense gravitational force, your time will be, you will lose time compared with an observer who isn't in that. So was that what happened to John and his colleagues at Rendlesham Forest? Was he exposed to extreme speed? Unlikely. Or extreme gravity, or another force that affects time. But whatever it was, time is affected by physics. And I think that's fascinating. And race, yes, in the film, and you've just raised this brilliantly, the human body has an ability to still measure time without our senses. So when we're cut off eyes, ears, nose, and touch, we can, as a human, still measure time. So it's independent of our senses, which is really interesting. And it raises a very interesting question that I've always had, I think from a child from reading comics. What if aliens are on what I call a different time base? Imagine their clock speed, their internal clock speed is 1,000,000 times faster than us, and they visit. We would never see them. They would be invisible or an incredible blur. Or imagine an alien that was so slow that we would think it wasn't alive and it was a rock, but because its time base was tiny. So I think you need to understand some of the effects of physics. And as James has just said, if you can understand and harness real physics that does exist, I mean, you can fly a clock around the Earth in a fast-moving airplane, and it will go slowly compared to the one on the ground. People have done that. It really works. So there is an actual methodology, a weaponization possibly, of time dilation. It's not just a woo-woo effect. It's real. It's there in physics. And I want to do something a bit different just to close, because I'm done now, is I'm actually going to set everybody a quiz question, our wonderful viewers. And that is this. You're driving down the road in a car, very, very close to the speed of light at night, and you switch on your headlights. Does the headlights remain black? Because, of course, you're very near the speed of light and the light can't go faster than the speed of light. If you're a tiny increment under the speed of light, does the light come out a few millimeters or 1/8 of an inch and stop? Or does light illuminate the road ahead by flying ahead at the speed of light? A, B, or C? Black, a tiny bit, or normal? So you don't have to explain it, but I'd really like to know what viewers think, and I will come back in the future and tell you the answer, and it's a very interesting answer. So
No
thanks, Ray.
Googling. No Googling.
No. I want people's initial gut reaction to what they think might happen.
You know, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the neutral aspect of it is physics, and then
Right.
from the base perspective. But time slips, wormholes, time dilation, gravitational potential, mass. I mean, we give it all to you. We give you examples from history where you can go do your own research. All of this that we put and present to you, that we put together and present to you, is meant for you critical thinkers to get out there and take this and expand on your knowledge and get it right so that you can present good, solid knowledge to everybody that has an interest in it. And that's what perpetuates a stronger column of people that are involved in what we're doing. I've got another question I want to pose to John real quick about the military weaponization of time dilation. Yeah. How effective, John, would it be as a weapon if the military could alter an enemy's perception of time?
I guess the best way to explain it is if you have, say, a tank going along and they're trying to lock in with, I think it's a harpoon or whatever they would try to destroy it with. And once the tank, if it had the computing ability to know it was getting, like the aircraft do, that they're getting locked on, they could activate the time dilation bubble, which would slow it down. And the actual reality would be that the tank would probably disappear like cloaking. And if they fired the missile would miss the tank completely because the tank is in a different reality. So that would be the easiest way. You could do that with aircraft. You could do it with a lot of things. In fact, you could even do it with a group of people if they had the ability small enough to carry it on themselves that you could actually cloak them into an area and they could be moving around doing stuff and the enemy would have no idea where they were at.
That right there is some spooky shit. Yeah. That's heavy. What an example! Great example. What are your guys' thoughts on disclosure, confirmation, the book coming open on United States government and what they're going to be able to say and what they're not? James, let's start with you.
I can wholeheartedly understand why things will be kept secret, just through some of the things that have the potential to do physics-wise, what they might be able to do. I think what worries me more is this type of thing, rather than the odd rumor that used to fly around that aliens were working with the military in underground bases. To me, that's not half as scary as some of the other things that could potentially change our world. But then there's also that other side of things. NASA are also looking at, with Harold Sonny White, they're also looking at propulsion methods and utilising warp bubbles and things like that. Now you got always questioning yourself, why are there two things going on? Why isn't this a combined effort? Why are there two separate things going on? Why may have something to do with the classification behind some of the stuff that is potentially being worked on.
Okay, Professor, you next.
Well, I'm very robust on this subject. I really do respect national security, and I think things should be kept secret if it protects the population or whoever or whichever country. But I think it's a complete mistake of the UFO community to rely on this, in my opinion, bizarre word, disclosure. Who's going to be disclosing? The very people with the secrets. And my background, my friends, everybody I know are scientists. And what I want is not disclosure. I want verification. I want scientific verification of this without stepping on national security, but I want people to actually independently look at the science of UAP. Possibly Avi Loeb's doing a good job, and other people who don't want to have classified secrets, they just want to have raw data collected by sensor systems which they control, not stuff filtered because it's a national security FLIR camera. You know, real stuff that they can say, well, we now know what this thing is, or we're closer to that answer. So for me, science is the answer, and not relying on Congress in any country to actually tell us what's going on, because they have a really strong vested interest not to tell you what's going on. So that's my very strong opinion.
And a good one. Very,
Thanks.
very well said. I'm 100% with you, Simon. John, let's go to you next before we wrap up here.
It's just simple. National security is being abused, and it's, as you can see, I believe there was an article that came out yesterday where the Senate has found out there's a secret program that's outside their limits, or there are secret programs that are outside their limits, and that's not how democracies work. Now, that doesn't mean that everything has to be exposed to the public, or even all the people inside of Congress, because loose lips sink ships. But there needs to be regulations done inside on the military and the intelligence agencies. And at this point, it's being overused, overabused, and I don't see it changing. And I'm not against national security, but at the same time, we're not a secret society or a national security state. We're not supposed to be, let's say it that way, but we are. So things need to change, but do I believe they will? No. Just like I don't believe disclosure's coming. The best we're ever going to get is what we've got right now, and maybe a little farther, where they're going to start showing that there is more being kept from the public and from Congress, but they're not going to open the vault and spew out the secrecies. And the last thing is, some of it is valid just because you don't want our other enemies of other countries knowing what we do or don't know, because that would also play into how we would protect ourselves against other people. Whether we like it or not, we live in a violent world, and part of our government's job in the military is to protect each country that they represent.
Right. For us here in the States, when I grew up and I learned about the war from our education system, the Second World War, just trying to wrap my head around the idea that my great aunts and uncles were working to once we got involved in the World War in the Pacific and over in the European theater, when the way that it came out, how we got the bomb just in the nick of time, and how all that transpired, those military leaders, man, they know how close they came to instead of a W, an L, losing that war. It was real close. Had it not been for German scientists sabotaging their efforts to get that bomb done and leaking information to us to get ours done faster, we'd probably all be speaking German right now. All of us. I mean, everybody put in. Everybody. And like Russia suffered some of the greatest personal loss in personnel and people and soldiers and all that. 20 million people died in that war. And when you think about never wanting to finish second again, it's going to be instilled into their DNA at that point to never get caught with your pants down again. And I think that's what bred this ultra secret state that we're living in. And I think that John is 100% right that this shit has just gone, it's run amok. And I think it happens in any society, because here on Earth, the animals that are running the show have a good side and have a bad side, and there's always going to be somebody over that hill that wants to come over that hill and take what you got. And we have to have security. We have to have defenses, and we have to have secrets to keep that possible. Because I would rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. and in the end, and I know that's kind of just being colorful, but in the end, I understand where secrets come from. The need for secret keeping is based in, and I think that there needs to be a house cleaning over here in the United States for sure. Guys, this was a very interesting show. It was filled with a lot of stuff for our viewers and listeners to chew on. It's been a fascinating ride so far. 6 episodes in this series, and 7 is in the works. And I appreciate everybody's patience. I appreciate all of you guys and all of your input in tonight's effort here. Does anybody else have anything they would like to add?
Only a quick experience of my own, really. It was to do with memory. When me and my parents, we visited the Rendlesham area the weekend. We had a conference there. I think John was there as well. And this night, everyone went from the conference room. We went to Rendlesham Forest to have a night walk, to go around the place at night. On the way down there, my father was a bit unsure about where to go during the night time, and the people we were following, they went a bit far ahead of us. So when we come to where we were supposed to drive into the car parking area, we actually drove past it, and there was nowhere to turn around, so we had to carry on going. We got to the little village, we'd done a U-turn, came back, and as we come back, we're doing about between 35, 45 mile an hour along these embankments and inclines and that, and all of a sudden the electrics went on the car, the lights went out, everything went out, apart from the fact that we were still driving. Now there's no lights around there was nothing around there, and it was just complete black, and we're still driving, and every now and then you could see little tiny bits of it, and I'm in the back as a passenger. Now literally what seemed about 2 or 3 minutes that my dad had already slowed down, and then everything came back on again. But what was really strange was the fact that when we actually got there, and I remember this, we got there, we didn't talk about it. Now, I would be one of the first ones to say, "Oh, you never guess what happened on the way up here," And it was about a year later when we was talking about maybe popping down there again on the anniversary. It was a year later that both me, my mum, and dad, we remembered it, and it was like for a whole year we'd forgotten that had actually happened. My mum will back me up on this. My father will back me up on this. But for some reason, we couldn't remember that, we'd forgotten to talk about it. We only remembered about a year later, and I found that personally odd, because my brain doesn't normally work like that. Normally it would be, guess what's happened here, there, and everywhere. And that was just an odd thing that happened. But again, that's more memory based, But that affected all of us, all of our memories, which was odd. Just odd.
That is odd. That is odd. And I've heard people with accounts of things that are very similar to that. Man, that is weird that the recall for that in everybody, you just missed that whole period. Simon, what do you have to close with?
Oh, I'm so blessed by talking to some fascinating people this week. I'm interviewing the head of Ukrainian radar research, because I'm doing a show on my channel to expose the real truth of the history of radar in the United Kingdom. And I've tracked down the very people who actually built it. So at the end of the week, I'm just doing all that research. The guys are fantastic. They're willing to talk to me. I might have to interview them speaking in Ukrainian, but what they are going to say is fascinating. And it's all about what we're talking about. It's about the history of physics. It's about the history of weaponization. And we need to have people like James and John and Race and myself to expose this. We need to understand and tell our audience things that they don't know, because that's really important.
I agree 100%. Thank you for that, Simon and James. Thank you. John had to bail. He had a doctor's appointment, and he was pressed for time. But I just want to reiterate that we as a team are working hard to give you an objective analysis of the highly strange. Let's just put it that way, by looking for scientific verification, and not just like hoping for disclosure. By asking the big questions and researching real science, not just repeating the truth and what others say, or by being objective, revealing the hidden truth. Because we will all try hard to bring you answers to those big questions that you deserve answers to. The truth is out there, and we know where to look. Between the intrepid James Warrow and Professor Simon and John Burroughs, I'm very lucky to be right here. Folks, stay tuned. Please like, follow, subscribe to the channels, and comment, for we always love to get your feedback on how we're doing, how we can do it better. And as always, any questions you might have that we can address in the comments, or even on a future show. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.